Today, I want you to consciously observe a disturbing psychological possibility for a few minutes. Do you believe that the thoughts moving through your mind belong to you? If you do, please listen to this carefully. The opinions you defend most passionately could be the echoes of voices you've long forgotten hearing. The personality you believe represents your authentic self might be an assemblage of borrowed fragments, pieced together from culture, media, and influence, until the collection feels like your identity. This imitation has become indistinguishable from your original being. Most people never confront this possibility. The sense of having thoughts feels like proof that those thoughts are theirs. The experience of holding beliefs suggests those beliefs emerged from genuine consideration. The conviction with which opinions are expressed seems to validate their authenticity. But what if conviction proves nothing except successful absorption? What if the strongest beliefs are often the most borrowed? What if these are repeated so frequently that they've worn grooves in your subconscious mind deep enough to feel like original thoughts? The borrowed idiot, eighth in Gurdjieff's classification, exists in this peculiar state where almost nothing claimed as mine actually originated from you. Political views absorbed from the surrounding culture get defended as personal truth. Intellectual positions copied from influential figures become the foundation of a worldview. Preferences shaped entirely by social conditioning feel like authentic taste. The person speaks, but the words come from elsewhere. The person thinks, but the thoughts are quotations. The person believes, but the beliefs were installed rather than developed. Gurdjieff understood something most psychological and spiritual teaching overlooks. Humans don't possess a unified self waiting to be discovered. Instead, they contain multitudes of small I's, each formed through external influence, each claiming temporary authority, and each convinced it represents the real person. These fragments compete for control, taking turns directing behavior, creating the illusion of continuity where only succession exists. Most never question this arrangement because questioning requires a stable observer capable of seeing the whole pattern, which is precisely what this fragmentation prevents. The borrowed idiot never develops such an observer. Everything remains borrowed. The personality itself is constructed from imitation, assembled from observed behaviors, built from absorbed patterns, until the collection coheres into what feels like authentic identity. But strip away the borrowed elements, the opinions heard from others, the beliefs copied from culture, the preferences shaped by social influence, and very little remains. Perhaps nothing remains except the capacity for imitation itself. Have you ever observed this pattern in conversations? Someone states a position with impressive conviction, speaks with apparent authority, and defends the view against challenge. But probe the origins of the belief, and confusion emerges. Where did this idea come from? When was it examined? What direct experience confirmed its validity? The answers reveal absorption rather than investigation. Everyone knows this means the surrounding culture repeats this constantly. It's obvious means I've encountered this belief so frequently it feels like a self-evident truth. The mechanism functions through passive reception, transformed into active defense. Ideas enter through media consumption, social interaction, and cultural immersion. No critical filter evaluates these ideas. No conscious choice accepts or rejects them. They simply accumulate, layer upon layer, forming the substrate of what gets called thinking. Then, when these absorbed ideas face a challenge, emotional attachment activates. The person defends positions they never consciously adopted, argues for beliefs they never deliberately chose, and fights for views they cannot trace to any source. This emotional defense reveals something crucial about the pattern. Borrowed ideas often get protected more fiercely than original thoughts because the borrowed ideas constitute identity itself. Questioning them threatens the entire constructed self. If these beliefs aren't mine, if these opinions weren't chosen, if this personality is assembled rather than authentic, then who am I beneath the borrowing? The question terrifies at such a fundamental level that the defensive response becomes automatic, protecting the borrowed structure before consciousness can even register the threat. Modern digital culture creates ideal conditions for this pattern to flourish invisibly. Social media platforms function as opinion distribution systems, spreading beliefs at viral speeds, making certain views feel universal simply through repetition and visibility. Echo chambers reinforce borrowed thoughts by surrounding the person with identical ideas, creating false confirmation that these must be personally discovered truths rather than collectively absorbed positions. Influencer culture provides pre-packaged personalities to imitate, complete with ready-made opinions, aesthetic preferences, and worldviews available for immediate adoption. The person scrolls, absorbs, adopts, and within months has assembled an entire identity from borrowed components. Political positions copied from favored accounts. Lifestyle preferences adopted from admired figures. Aesthetic sensibilities imitated from trending sources. Even the language used to express these borrowed elements comes from elsewhere. Particular phrases, specific terminology, certain rhetorical patterns, all copied unconsciously until the person speaks in quotations while believing they're expressing original thoughts. Notice how this extends beyond obvious opinion formation into the substrate of personality itself. The way someone walks might be borrowed from observed models. The gestures used during conversation could be imitative mannerisms. The emotional reactions to situations might follow scripts learned from celebrities rather than emerging from genuine feelings. Layer after layer, the self gets constructed from external elements until the construction becomes so thorough that differentiating between authentic impulse and absorbed pattern becomes nearly impossible. Gurdjieff's teaching about the many I's becomes viscerally real here. One borrowed I speaks confidently about politics, repeating views absorbed from news sources. Another borrowed I expresses aesthetic preferences copied from cultural influences. A third borrowed I holds moral positions taken from religious or philosophical traditions, never personally investigated. These fragments take turns controlling expression, each one convinced it represents the real self. But in fact, none of them are aware they're all borrowed voices speaking through a person who has never developed an original thought. The intellectual center in this type operates in pure reception mode, processing input without generating genuine inquiry. Information enters, gets stored, and becomes available for repetition, but no original synthesis occurs. No authentic questioning happens. No genuine investigation takes place. The center functions like a sophisticated recording device, capturing and replaying content while creating the illusion of thinking through the act of recombination and selective emphasis. The emotional center contributes to reactive attachment to whatever the intellectual center has absorbed. Strong feelings arise around borrowed beliefs, creating a conviction that feels like proof of authenticity. But the emotions are mechanical responses to identity threat, not genuine passion emerging from lived truth. Challenge a borrowed opinion, and anger flares not because real understanding is being questioned, but because the constructed self is being destabilized. The physical center reinforces patterns through habitual repetition. Borrowed gestures become automatic. Imitated behaviors transform into unconscious routines. The body learns to perform the personality, executing the assembled self so smoothly that even the person inhabiting it cannot detect the performance. This creates existence at a complete remove from direct experience. Everything filters through borrowed frameworks. Every perception gets interpreted through adopted lenses. Every response follows learned patterns. The person never encounters reality directly because borrowed constructs mediate every contact with what is. Original experience becomes impossible when every moment gets immediately translated into familiar categories, processed through inherited concepts, and responded to via copied reactions. The turning point usually comes through an unexpected confrontation with the borrowing itself. Someone asks a simple question, "Why do you believe that?" And the person realizes they have no answer rooted in direct experience or genuine investigation. The belief exists because it was absorbed, repeated, and the surrounding culture reinforces it. But no personal verification ever occurred. No authentic inquiry ever happened. The position was inherited, not earned through conscious examination. But for those who can sustain the recognition without immediately borrowing new concepts to explain it, a new possibility appears. Not replacing borrowed ideas with other borrowed ideas, but developing the capacity for genuine inquiry. Not accepting new authorities to replace old ones, but learning to verify claims through direct investigation. Not adopting alternative frameworks, but examining experience without the mediation of inherited concepts. This requires radical self-questioning and experimenting that most find unbearable. Every belief must be traced to its source. Every opinion must be examined for its origins. Every aspect of personality must be investigated to determine whether it emerged authentically or was absorbed from external influence. The process reveals how little remains that could be called original, and how completely the imitation has become identity. Most retreat from this investigation quickly. The borrowed structure reasserts itself, often strengthened by the addition of new concepts about authenticity that themselves remain unexamined borrowings. "I'm being my true self" becomes the latest adopted position, defended with the same mechanical attachment that protected previous borrowed beliefs. The pattern continues, now with spiritual or psychological vocabulary providing fresh material for imitation. Breaking free requires something more difficult than most spiritual teaching suggests. Not finding your true self, which often means finding new authorities to copy. Not discovering your authentic voice, which usually means adopting different borrowed frameworks. But developing the capacity to notice when borrowing is occurring, catching the moment when an external idea becomes internal belief without conscious examination, recognizing imitation as it happens rather than discovering it years later. This vigilance demands constant effort against the gravitational pull of absorption. Culture continuously offers ready-made positions. The media constantly provides pre-packaged thoughts. Social influence perpetually suggests borrowed identities. The easy path always leads toward adoption rather than investigation, toward imitation rather than original inquiry, toward borrowed certainty rather than authentic uncertainty. Strong opinions emerge fully formed from trending topics. Political positions solidify around whatever narrative gains social momentum. Identity constructs itself from available cultural materials, and through it all, the person believes themselves authentic, believes their thoughts are theirs, and believes their personality represents genuine self-discovery rather than sophisticated imitation of observed patterns. The borrowed idiot doesn't lie about what they think. Lies would require knowing the difference between truth and falsehood. Instead, this type repeats what was never theirs to begin with, defends it, and builds identity from materials borrowed from external sources. The only verification comes through the brutal honesty of tracing every belief to its source.